Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to BNC Now. It is Thursday, June 11th. I'm Laverne McGee.
And I am Anthony Amy, and once again, Laverne, it is a busy day. Another busy day, particularly with the man who runs this country.
Absolutely. As we speak, he is on his way to Dallas, Texas, where he will be meeting with members of the African American community and also going to a fundraising dinner this evening. So lots on the agenda. According to officials, the White House has been drafting an executive order on police reform, and the president has considered endorsing additional police reform measures in the wake of national outcries over George Floyd's death, of course, at the hands of police in Minnesota. But it's not clear whether President Trump will take any of those actions while he is in George Floyd's home state.
It's curious, and I'm trying to remember, and so I have to admit, for way too long, honestly, and in fact, I'm probably a little embarrassed to admit that I had not paid as much attention to all of politics, as I have in the last number of years. I don't know if there's been a time that I can remember though where we all just are almost on eggshells. Like, you just have no real inkling as to what the leader of the free world will do, especially for a topic that's so important to all of us.
Well, I think that people really realize now how important the elected leadership is, because, as you said, I think under the previous administration, we did not know the every move and the every step and all of these nuances. We did not have these big issues that we were dealing with. Under this administration, people are paying attention simply because the president is constantly interacting. He tweets on a regular basis, so every time he tweets, that can have a number of ramifications. The stock market can go up or down. It can cause people to be upset. It can cause some people to be happy. So on a daily basis, we are involved in the politics of this nation from the top all the way down, which in some cases is good. Mm-hmm. In others, of course, is not so good when we're all kind of stressed and not agreeing on some of the things that we'd like to see happening in this country.
Yeah, certainly the evolution of social media has helped this president in many ways, but it also begs the question, Laverne, about trust. So you mentioned the interaction that he has on a daily basis using social media, Twitter specifically, but how much can the American people trust what he says on Twitter? And the last numbers that I saw indicated that the majority of Americans do not trust what this president says. So although there's more interaction, social media, again, certainly has evolved certainly since the days of Barack Obama's presidency. But again, when those words come out, how much do you trust it? Which leads to instances like today. I have no idea what's coming out of his mouth.
Well, he's meeting with African Americans, many of them who have been in his circle before. So we're not expecting to see any of the leadership that we've been seeing perhaps with the police protest cases. Obviously, we're not going to see people like Reverend Al Sharpton. We're not going to see Attorney Benjamin Crump. Mm-hmm. We're going to see a different cast of characters, but they also have their opinions. They also have their thoughts, and they have the president's ear. So as the president sits down with them today, let's hope that they are going to talk for the greater good of everybody.
That would be great. And I will say, you said a cast of characters.
I did not mean any disrespect when I said that.
Not at all. I mean, and again, the people can judge for themselves, but some would certainly call them characters.
I didn't call them characters.
No, you did not, but some would.
Some would, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's move on to our other top story. Of course, coronavirus. We want to get you caught up on all of the latest numbers. Let's take a look. About 7.4 million cases of the novel coronavirus have been confirmed worldwide, including at least 417,000 deaths. That is according to Johns Hopkins University. The U.S. has passed 2 million confirmed cases of the virus, also according to Johns Hopkins University. And the number of positive COVID-19 cases in the Indian city of Mumbai has surpassed those reported in the Chinese city of Wuhan, where, of course, the original epicenter of the virus outbreak was.
The Labor Department reports that workers filed another 1.5 million claims for jobless benefits last week, suggesting that some Americans are still being pushed out of work nearly 3 months into the pandemic. The number of new claims filed last week could be higher than 2.5 million, despite every state loosening stay-at-home orders and allowing businesses to reopen in recent weeks. However, the unemployment rate in May was still at historic highs not seen since the Great Depression. The Bureau of Labor Statistics data also indicates about 6 million people have left the workforce since January. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, I believe you indicated this on the show yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, not a very favorable view of the future, unfortunately. He said, and I quote, "This is the biggest economic shock in the U.S. and the world really in living memory." So Powell and other officials expecting the unemployment rate to remain high for another 2 years. That is unbelievable. You mentioned the coronavirus numbers as well. Rates continue to soar in certain states, mostly southern states, up 97% in Texas, Laverne, since Memorial Day. That was only like 2 weeks ago. And you're almost double the cases. I mean, this is incredible.
I'm laughing, but it's not a laughing matter, but it's just so shocking that you have to laugh.
The balance, though, I mean, coronavirus, the economy, it's almost as if there's been no progress made, and yet we continue to reopen. We continue to see people out almost as if it's normal, not wearing masks. This is quite a time right now.
Well, what experts are saying is that you can't leave it up to the government anymore to make your healthcare decisions. It has to come from your personal, your physicians, whoever you seek medical advice from. They're saying that despite the fact that business is opening and things are getting back to quote unquote normal, that doesn't mean that you are not at risk of getting sick. And so it's literally come down to the point where the federal government is not the ones telling us. Remember, we used to have on a daily basis. They don't tell us anymore what the cases are. They don't have statements on it. Very rare do they have extensive conversation about it within the public sector. So you as an individual have to decide whether you're willing to take that chance, knowing that the numbers are still going up. Certain places are seeing an increase in cases. Florida is one of them. And of course, we know that President Trump has never worn a mask in public. He has made it very clear how he feels about that. So different individual local governments, counties, cities, even states, those are the places where you might want to look to for more guidance. But really, it's up to the individual to decide whether or not they want to keep moving forward without the masks and pretend things are back to normal, or still take precautions, which they want people to still take precautions. It's just not going to, you're just not going to be hearing it day after day like we were before.
Choose wisely.
All right, well, moving on. What else have we got for today, Anthony?
Let's see, Thomas Lane, one of those former Minneapolis police officers now, awaiting trial in the death of George Floyd, and he's been released on $750,000 bond. Lane and another officer held down other parts of George Floyd's body next to Derek Chauvin. Authorities saying in a probable cause statement, Lane had been on the police force for just 4 days when Floyd died, and was, quote, doing everything he thought he was supposed to do as a 4-day police officer. That according to his attorney, Earl Gray.
Yeah, a lot of debate over what should happen to these officers, and that's exactly what one of the talking points is supposed to be when President Trump meets with these faith leaders and other representatives to try to decide how to sort of move forward with the discussion that's being had in this country. Some productive, some not productive.
So I think many people are wondering, struggling with obviously the actions of the officers in this case, but in regards to this particular officer who was on the job for 4 days, the question becomes, was he on the force long enough to know what his duties were? Was he in a position where he was hesitant because, I've been on the job for 4 days. I mean, many of you can certainly attest to being on a new job for less than a week and not really knowing exactly what to do, probably having your head swimming, but of course, we all know the difference between right and wrong. So certainly there is some question as to whether this officer should be facing the same charges as the others. Of course, the Minneapolis police chief saying yesterday that that's not an excuse. Even rookies are held to the same standards. They've all been through the same training. And in essence, he said, there's right and then there's wrong. This one chose not to do what was right.
Yeah, if you are ready to take on the role of being a police officer full time, you've got to be ready to go day one.
Yes.
There's really no
Right.
room for error. And if you felt that you don't have the decision-making capabilities to see a man who's clearly, there's use of excessive force, if you don't have that kind of judgment day one, I don't know if you would ever have it, because that's something, that's just human instinct. That's, you know, that's not even something that you get in, that you should need to be trained on. If you see a man who's clearly over the line struggling,
right.
And the force is unnecessary, the man was not fighting back, he did not have a weapon, you know, there was no justification for that. So that's just plain common sense human decency, and I think that's what people are going to argue about when he goes to trial.
I think it speaks to the peer pressure too. I mean, we've all felt peer pressure during our days in schools and even as adults in a certain sense. And in police, with police unions and police officers and the way that that entire industry is structured, I'm sure that there was some peer pressure felt by this young rookie police officer wondering, am I supposed to go and override what this particular veteran officer is doing right now? But again, there's right and then there's wrong. To your point, be ready to go from day one. I heard someone say with tremendous, I don't want to put it in comedic form, but someone said it with brutal honesty. It's not like, it's kind of like pilots. With a pilot, you can't go on the job on day one and say, well,
right.
I'm not really sure. I mean,
Exactly.
lives are in your hands. The same can be said for police officers, of course.
Yeah, his life was in their hands. Well, stay with us. We have much more. Coronavirus does not discriminate. Coming up, a woman in her 20s undergoes major surgery after coronavirus destroys both of her lungs. That story when BNC Now continues.